Hello?
Oh, hi, yeah, this is, that negative thought you've been having, and I just can't let you try and change yourself without a fight, so, go ahead and just turn the show off, okay? And, yeah, everything's still fine.
This is Blindsight with your host, Bill Lundgren, an AINC original podcast.
You serious?
We're not holding back truth. We're here to help you heal and become the best you possible. Here's the chair, here's the pillow, here's Bill.
Welcome. This is another episode of Blindsight, the podcast on mental health. I'm your host, Bill Lundgren, and the program is produced as usual by the Audio Information Network of Colorado. I'm pleased to welcome you to the show today, and I'm going to, rather than having a guest, it's essentially going to be me talking about a very important issue, which has to do with getting care, using insurance for mental health issues and the problems associated with it for a lot of people. But let me start off when we talk about the insurance industry, the health industry. And this is really a very major issue for all of us in terms of getting people to understand that we have to make services available to people in a way that people can afford. And certainly one of the keys is the health industry, but I think that most people are really unaware how the medical insurance companies handle financing therapists like me and providing services to you, the provider, and where this copay comes from and so forth. So let's start off just with the basics. The ways that people can get their mental health services paid for can be Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, company insurance, or company provided as part of the employee benefit, or by just paying out of pocket. Now, each one has different things involved, but let me just kind of focus on the using health insurance, because they're the ones that most readily identifiable, though I have to say Medicare, which is primarily for people with disabilities and the elderly, does provide some funding for mental health care. Medicaid is a service that varies from state to state, and some states don't offer Medicare, much to the chagrin of the federal government in terms of helping people, and they also, all of these places set prices. The health insurance, you pay for your health insurance. And then when you use the service, you pay an additional copay. For example, for mental health, you might pay a copay of $20 or $30 for a session. And then you get the service, and the provider theoretically is receiving funds from the insurance company. We bill the insurance company, and they pay us, they pay us a fee that they set. In other words, if you look at at the paperwork they send you, you may see a high fee from a therapist, but then there's a fee that they authorize. And then out of that authorized fee, you pay a copay and they pay a portion. The authorized fee is somewhere usually in the area of $50 to $60 a session for a full 45-minute to hour session. If for some reason you can't complete a 45-minute session, as a therapist, I have to let the insurance company know that, and they give me like 1/3 of the total price that they offer for a full fee. and I basically have to eat it. Now, some companies have very low insurance rates, and they, in turn, will only do a lower fee for the session, of which, in one case, the company will only pay their portion is $3.22, while the person, the client, pays the bulk of the approved fee, which is much more than $3.22. But you don't know that till you get in there, unfortunately, unless you really have a chance to go over the paperwork. And when we submit, we can do it electronically, which is the royal pain, but we let them know, okay, we have to give them a diagnostic code. In other words, something from the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is a mouthful, which is put out by the American Psychiatric Association, which categorizes all psychiatric diagnoses and with numbers. Or we, depending on what the insurance company wants, is that there's another whole classification, which is an international classification, and we have to look that up, put it in, plus procedure codes, plus, make sure we fill out all the individual lines. And I don't do it because it's taken far too much time. I can't see it that well. It's not really, I don't find it comfortable with a computer. So I hire somebody, which is an expense. And so when you look at $50 or $60 a session, then you figure I have to pay in malpractice insurance. I have to pay for the license by the state. I have to pay for continuing education, which is not cheap, to keep up my credentials, but also because I want to be able to do the best job I can. Communicating with the insurance company is on my time, and dealing with all the paperwork and running an office, providing in some places when I've had an office, I've had to pay for parking for clients to be able to get into a session, be able to get there, settle in, and concentrate on what they have to do. So it's one thing after another. So by the time you get through a $60 or pay on a session, that's pretty much eaten up. And that's why so many therapists, they may do that for a while, but they throw in the towel and say, okay, I'm going private pay. And then they may charge $175, $250 in order to pay for all the things they have to do and to be able to have a living wage. And, and then you wonder why so high? Well, basically that's it. And we have your care in mind. We have to be able to pay attention if there's an emergency, to be able to act outside of the session to help in an emergency. We have a lot of responsibilities, and I feel it. I'm tired by the end of the day because of the responsibility. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm griping, but I guess I am. The point is that I think that you as the consumer need to be aware that this is going on. Now, with people with disabilities, oftentimes will access Medicare. If you've ever done Medicare or seen it done, it's a lot of paperwork before you get approved, and it takes a while for approval. And, when you finally get in, great, but there's also the possibility that you may have to reapply and all that kind of thing to fill the requirements of the federal government. It's not an easy task. They don't want anybody to take it easy and, as they see it, or as some people see it, to, get something for nothing. You have to work for it. And the same with Medicaid, which is even more convoluted because there's run by the state with the support of the federal government, and they have their set of criteria. And on top of everything else, people are focused on economics. This is the big word, economics. Well, they want to make sure that there's money. So as you hear periodically people complaining about Medicare costs and Social Security costs, and we need to cut it. And yet, people who are providing the services are not getting that much, and you as the consumer is not getting that much. But to a lot of people that just say, this is outrageous, you're getting something for nothing. Hello? But the issue being that this system is really based on economics and much more than need. Now, I'll go back to the insurance company. One of the largest, if not the largest insurance company in the country has an annual revenue of more than $200 billion. And I got to tell you, that $60 that I get for an hour session is a very small piece of that. And I have to admit, my nose got out of joint when I learned that the chair of this particular company got multi-million-dollar golden parachute when he retired. And I thought, okay. When is some of this going to drift down to the therapists who are actually doing the work, plus the people in the insurance company? When we may have to get the pre-authorization, or we get a referral from a company. These people, or we call the company to get some questions answered, which is another whole can of worms. Which I'll just give you a little bit. The fact is that the frontline person doesn't have as much experience with the company and company policies as, the higher up executives, but you never talk to as in most companies, you don't talk to those executives, you talk to the frontline. They really try to answer the question, but many times they can't. So if you, the therapist, get a turn down, then you have to file an appeal. And you have to find out where to send the appeal and so forth and so on. I have to make sure that the company gets billed within 60 days of providing the service. And if I don't, that's an automatic turn down of our submission. However, there isn't that from the standpoint of how long the company takes to finally pay, if they pay at all. And the other piece of it is I'm trying to have a healthy working relationship with you, the consumer. And when you find out that you thought you would only have to pay $20 a session, and the company tells me to tell you that you're on the hook for the entire fee, that has a little bit of impact in terms of your therapy, in terms of how you feel about me and how you operate. And you may even say, I can't afford it, and you may have to leave. And, I had a case where the company apparently was told that they have to pay more of their portion of the benefit, that is to pay the insurance company. They try to get the insurance company to accept more, and the insurance company says, no, in fact, this year we're going to charge you more. So the company says, no, I won't do it. And the insurance company says, okay, you can stay with us, but you'll have to pay this. And then the insurance company apparently passes that on to you, the consumer, with a larger copay. And then you receiving this larger copay, well, what would be natural to blame me, thinking that I'm getting more money, when I have to explain to you, no, I'm getting the same amount. And just an example of an amount, a company that I started with, an insurance company that I became a provider 30 years ago, in those 30 years has increased their payment to me and other therapists by $8 over that 30 years. And, there are many times that people just say, no, I have to go full fee. The problem is, how do we provide services for people who can't afford $175 or $250 a session for therapy? And this is where we get into the ethics and concern and, wow, it just, it gets a little overwhelming at times. But that's why I'm, needing people to understand, because we don't talk about money that much. It's kind of, for therapists to talk about money is a little uncomfortable, as it is with most people. But the point is, that's where it's at. And if you, the consumer, are angry at us, the therapists, for charging what we do, that's the nature of the beast. And that's what goes on behind the scene. Now, one of the things that corporations are doing is, as an employee benefit, is allowing, they make agreements with insurance companies or what they call employee assistance professional organization. And they say, okay, if my client, my employee needs some professional help, and we want it to be confidential, I want them to go to you. And then what happens, the company pays 100% of 3 to 6 sessions. And hopefully it gets fixed in that period of time. But if not, then the therapist may continue with the client, or may, at the choice of the employee, or refer the person for more care at the standard insurance rate. And that's how the system works, whether any of us like it or not. And there's also, I should point out, we don't get much support from the federal government at the licensed professional counselor. My national association has worked for years, and finally this spring has had LPC eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. We weren't before. So that's new, and that'll be interesting to see how that, comes out. Because the other problem, and it should be pretty obvious in the basis of what I've told you, there ain't many therapists or people who want to be therapists under those requirements. And so when we're looking for people with specific interests, or someone who's knowledgeable about blindness, for example, there aren't too many of us out there. In fact, when I go to a conference, of 200, 300 people, I'm often usually the only person with the disability, period, that's attending the conference. And I feel like I stick out like a sore thumb, because there does not seem to be too many of us out there who are willing to put up with, or even to consider, a career in mental health. And gee, if any of you have ever thought of doing mental health, please consider it, because we need people, and we particularly need people with disabilities, so that people with disabilities can know that, oh, here's somebody who knows what I'm going through. And, I've been trying to find some of these people. And so far, fortunately, I found a couple of people in Colorado, and nationally, only 2 names have been given to me of people who are blind who are doing therapy. I know there are more out there, but they just don't show up. And we don't have an organization. The National Federation for the Blind has a health provider. I don't know how many people are in there. I haven't been able to go to the national convention to find out. But I know it's a pretty exclusive group. So, but that doesn't mean you don't go to therapy. You just have to be, making sure that the person knows how to work with you if the blindness is part of the problem, or know when not to be working on the blindness, but working on the mental health issue. That's a whole different ball game. And, and not, because sometimes a person gets so focused on the blindness that they forget that blind people have the same mental health issues as other people, if they have them at all. But, it's a crazy system. And yet, this is the system we have. And the only thing that I could say to people that, if you may need to just let your legislator know that there's something wrong with the system. If this is, if you feel that. But, if you're okay with an insurance company taking $3.22 and paying that part of your therapy, more power to you. But it's a system that seems to be resistant to change because it's so massive. There is such a need. And, when they don't provide enough mental health counselors, they don't provide enough, and I'm not talking just about mental health. I'm talking about substance abuse as well. If you listen to the news, how many times in the last couple of months have you heard, oh, so-and-so with a mental health problem, which wasn't dealt with? The homeless, the people on the street, mental health issues, plus or substance abuse issue. There's a lot of need out there. And unfortunately, the problem that people keep raising is, that'd be too expensive to provide mental health services or health services through Medicare or Medicaid. We can't afford what we have. And we say, well, wait a minute. If we provide adequate mental health services, can we avoid gun violence? Can we at least reduce gun violence? Can we reduce domestic violence? Can we reduce the number of people who are in prison? Isn't that a cost saving? But people, don't talk about that. And that's one of the things that's frustrating. That's one of the reasons I'm glad I'm in the process of retiring, because it's going to give me some time. I don't want to, crow about this, but it's giving me time, like with this podcast, to let you know what the situation is. But also, I'm hoping to start giving talks at professional meetings about disabilities, about encouraging people with disabilities to become therapists, to help in that process, but also to encourage therapists who are not among the disabled to understand our needs. And I'm hoping that other people will join me in that, because what we've been doing has not been working. And I don't want to sound like, well, I feel more like the kid who looked at the emperor and said, the emperor is naked. Because we're all thinking that, there's plenty of services for everybody. And if any of you have tried, you may find, no, it isn't. But how much is adequate? And that's what is real difficult to establish. How much is an adequate number of therapists, an adequate price to pay for the services, and to help everybody who needs it. Boy, I would love to be able to provide service for people on the street. They're talking about mental health people going out with the police in touchy situations. They're talking about the need for us. But, okay, who's going to pay for it? That's, the basic problem with everything right now. And so if you make your voices known to everybody, if you let your legislators know, look, something has to change here. It's expensive to go through medical school. If you're going in psychiatry, it's expensive to go through social work, get a master's in counseling or social work or any of those. And so you go in there, you have all that student debt. And, we go out and, we're taught to be empathetic and caring. And, gee, it'd be nice if we didn't have to worry about money. And I remember going through school and not getting a single course in business. Now, I had an undergraduate in business, but, that didn't really help in terms of running this business, this private practice that I had, and dealing with the insurance company and negotiating, especially when really what makes a difference if all the therapists were to get together and demand better of the insurance company. But, so there's even some policies with some companies you're not supposed to talk about how much you get paid by the company. So, maybe if we all got together like the FedEx people, and protest, maybe something would change. But it's a little drastic in terms of what people are prepared for, particularly when they're not willing to. There's a lot of people out there unwilling to put the economics of climate change and put money into preventing climate change because they think it'll affect their personal economics. And, I think we're very much in a crisis, but you still have the insurance company. You understand what your requirement of your policy, what is the requirement of your therapist in terms of finances, everything up front, knowing that the therapist oftentimes doesn't find out how much he or she is going to get reimbursed by the company until they begin to reimburse it. They don't, they're not real free with that information. You can find out, but you may have to fight with the person you talk to on the telephone to get that information because they're reluctant to let people know, or they say it was this, that, and the other thing. You also have to pay attention to your medical insurance in terms of deductible, the biggie. Those who have a high deductible, when they go into a therapist, they pay the full authorized fee until they meet that deductible. That's a shock to a lot of people, unfortunately. But the more you're educated about this before you go in, the easier it's going to be for you. So we're there to help you. We really want to help. It's not easy, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to file appeals. I haven't, been told after the fact, oh, no, we're not paying for this. It's a high deductible, and so forth and so on. But that's the price that we have for being in private practice, unfortunately. And we don't have anybody to fall back on. That's why there's often far more people whose spouses have other, what a friend of mine calls legitimate jobs instead of being a therapist, to provide the differential of a nice living style. Because, for a great many of us, unfortunately, it's not there in during counseling. I'm delighted to report that I was just recently talking with the local training center here in Denver, and they had 3 students who are really interested in pursuing psychology, social work, or so forth. And I say, great, let's do it. Let's get people out there with disabilities, out there where other people with disabilities can see us and can understand that we can do it. We can make this system work for all of us. If any of you have any questions or about what I've said, please don't hesitate to contact AIN and drop us an email, and I'll try to do the best I can. It may take several weeks, but, we'll do what we can. Okay. Well, we've come to the end of our time. This subject obviously has gotten me on a roll, and I hope all of you have got something out of it. But I'll bring this to a close and tell you thank you for this opportunity to talk about this. And next week, Jonathan and I are going to talk about some of his reaction to what I've said and perhaps to do some clarification. So we look forward to having a chance to talk. And we'll look forward then to you tuning in to the next podcast. This is Bill Lundgren, Blindsight, from Audio Information Network of Colorado. I hope the committee decides on a new name of the organization. But anyway, look forward to touching base with all of you in the next session.